All right, thank you everyone for being here today. Well, I'll let you explain that, right? Okay. We're mirroring some technology and that kind of stuff, but we'll figure it out hopefully before we get there. Good afternoon and welcome to the, is this our third meeting? The third meeting of the Interagency Collaborative to End Homelessness. I want to thank you all for being here today and as always for the work that you're doing, have done over the past several months as we work together on this issue and for being here today. I want to thank Kent County for allowing us the use of this room and for hosting us today. So we are going to hear a few presentations today that I think are meant to really give an outline of some of the work that has been going on, both by this collaborative, but also by the continuum of care. I described it on the way in. Where's Mimi? I described it on the way in as sort of trying to get the plane onto an approach. We're not quite landing it yet, but we're trying to line up with the runway. And so the hope for me is that our next meeting, which we will talk about at the end here, will be sort of bringing that plane in for a landing and what I've been thinking of as sort of a phase one of the work of this collaborative. We have an upcoming budget and legislative cycle. And so we want to make sure that we have some things to talk about in that context. And that to me is where we are with phase one, as we hear some of the ideas that have come out of the survey of the state programs, as we present to you today some of the findings from our public input work that we've been doing over the past several weeks and months, as we hear from the continuum of care and the blueprint, that gives us enough information to kind of say, okay, these are some immediate next steps that we can take some action on as we move forward the next several months. In my mind, that gives us then also the opportunity to sort of reset what this collaborative is and does and how it's structured. We have up until now kept it pretty tight when it comes to membership and the focus specifically being on the state programs, the state funding, and how do we sort of work through that. So that's the work that we've been doing, but there's a lot more. And I think that there's been a lot of people to their credit that have come and said, well, listen, I work for, public defender's office. I work in this part of labor, all these are that are little like, gosh, the collaborative isn't talking about that part of solving for homelessness, right? And so I think that's where we go once we sort of bring this phase one plane in for a landing and have some ability to execute on that vision and then expand and rethink how this group is focused. And so that'll be the work that we start to engage in October and into November. And I think that'll be a much more, probably more familiar sort of exercise for interagency types of groups to think about the different things that we need to address, the different people we need to bring into the conversation, and how we go about that business. So that is my quick introduction for today. I would like let's start with introductions just more broadly. You start down at this end. Did you just put a candy in your mouth? If so, then yes, we're starting with you.
Jessica Klein with Department of Corrections, Chief of Planning, Research and Reentry. Tara Taylor, Commissioner of the Department of Corrections.
Katie Grasso, Chief of Staff of the Department of Labor.
Rachel Stucker, Director of Housing Alliance Delaware. We're the lead agency for the Delaware Continuum of Care.
Randy Nauman, Sussex County Community Development and Housing Director.
I'm Susan Kent. I'm the chair of the Delaware Continuum of Care. Buick, Education Associate for Out-of-School Time Programs and Students Experiencing Homelessness, McKinney Ventures State Coordinator on behalf of Secretary Martin.
John Kane, I'm Governor Meyer's Policy Director.
I'm Matt.
Kevin Sippel, County Administrator. The most important thing, if you need to use the restrooms, out to the left, there is bathrooms off to the left. It's a short walk, or you can go to the right back towards where the elevator is. All you, Mr. Mayor.
Oh, Alvin Christensen, Mayor of City of Delaware, a nonprofit organization.
Steve Gateman, Secretary for the Delaware Children's Department.
Good afternoon, I'm Carrie Casey. I'm the General Manager of the Newcastle County Department of Community Services, and we used to use this room a lot.
Yeah.
Pre-COVID, so it's kind of like a nice memory to come back. And I remember where the bathrooms were.
I'm Stephanie Griffin. I'm with the Delaware State Housing Authority.
I am Alice Davis with Delaware State Housing Authority.
Ashley Dawson, Director of Public Relations for the Housing Authority.
Melissa Ziegler, Delaware State Housing Authority.
Michelle Statham, Delaware State Housing Authority.
Steve Metro, University of Delaware.
Hi, everyone. Lisa Laughlin, State Senator from the 3rd District and Chair of that.
I'm Amelia Ramshire with Housing Alliance Delaware.
I'm Sophie Phillips, representative for the 18th District.
Diane Miller, Home Campaign.
Sonia Starr, Policy Director at Housing Alliance Delaware. Amy Rail, University of Delaware, Center for Community Research and Service.
And
Oh, I'm just signing in.
signing in.
Oh, hi, everyone.
We'll put her on the spot.
Oh, Karen Heller, I'm a teacher.
Hi, guys.
Yes.
As a point of protocol, could we invite Senator Lobman and Representative Phillips to sit at the table with us, please?
Well, Marion.
As a matter of protocol.
Thank you. And on the way to Mimi, did you have, you wanted to say something? Quick report out, I think, on the conference at the University of Delaware had.
Very quick. So the last time you all met, I took the mic and I had a moment to let everyone know that we were hosting a conference on homelessness, our second annual conference on homelessness at the University of Delaware. And got to see some of you there, which was wonderful, appreciate it. And we were really pleased with the day and hopeful that we're going to be able to collaboratively continue to build on those themes of leadership and planning and action and collaboration. I'm excited about that, but I also wanted to say a special thank you to DSHA for amazing partnership and support. Please express to Alex Madeas, we appreciated the weight that he carried and your sponsorship. Michelle, where'd you go? For speaking on one of our panels, and Secretary Aiken, I'm standing right behind you, but you brought a lot to the discussion on the Interagency Collaborative, so thank you all.
I'm sorry I missed it. I was delivering my oldest to college that day.
So you'll have to come to the next one.
And so I would have much rather. But thanks for everything the University of Delaware has done. This is the second year,
This is the second.
so we look forward to the third.
Yes.
Okay, moving on into presentations. Ashley Dawson, I think you were up first.
Yes.
To give us a readout on the public outreach efforts and the listening sessions we've had around the state. And I want to thank you if you were someone who presented at one of our listening sessions, because I think one of the things that we try to do is not just listen, but also share some information, which really helped us spark the conversation. We had great conversations about McKinney-Vento. And last, gosh, when was that? Monday, we were at the food bank, and so we talked a lot about food insecurity, and so it has kind of given a little bit of a theme in addition to sort of the geographic distribution of the listening sessions we've had around the state. They are not done. We're continuing that work, but again, in the spirit of aligning with the runway, we wanted to give you a readout on what we've done so far.
That was a very good intro. And thank all of you who participated and all of you who we are coming to. If we haven't already to participate, you'll be hearing from us. So I thank you in advance for your willingness to help us spread the message and make our campaign successful. So the goals of this outreach campaign is to gather information for all of you, to go out to where people are and to hear what they are struggling with, who's providing services, what people need to know, the questions they have. We also wanted to educate the public about homelessness. We were hearing, from all of you, as you know, factors are changing behind homelessness, what the demand is, to reduce stigma, and just really put out a PR campaign that educates the public. We gathered members of our public relations teams, policy and planning teams, and our community development teams at DSHA, and we came up with a plan. We created the resource-based listening sessions, and they are generally 2-hour sessions. They've been in person only. We start with a very short message, welcome from our director that explains the work of the collaborative. Then we get into short presentations on the people we've invited. Those have been social service providers, community groups, nonprofits, state agencies. And then they give short presentations. We take questions as we go. And then the last hour or more is really dedicated to just open conversation on what they've heard, what they need to know. It's from the gamut from centralized intake to centralized waiting lists to where to get food and who's doing obstacles to stable housing. This is what you've seen online or on social media, the unhoused, not unheard, with the goal of what's being done and what's needed. So far, we've had, as Matt said, 4 of these events. We have 3 more in the works, and then we also want to do one that's geared toward Code Purple as it gets colder. And then if you all have demands and ideas, we can certainly extend it, but we know that the group's goal was a report in January. We kicked off in Dover. We really wanted to be in libraries as much as we could because they are serving the, unhoused around Delaware. And we wanted to be at the Hope Center because we've talked about this so much as a model. So thank you, Carrie. Your group was fantastic. We went there and spent many hours with the in-depth tour and everything. So we appreciate that. We visited the Georgetown Public Library, the Food Bank of Delaware and Milford. We are hitting the Milton Library ideally this month, visiting, going to Wilmington, and then Redemption City and Seaford early October. And we'll share those details out as we go. We're getting about 15 to 25 people at these sessions, but we weren't sure what to expect when we started. But we've gotten great feedback. They've really been informal, candid conversations. Like we start to see the questions go amongst one another who's attended. We had a woman from Pennsylvania come to the Hope Center event to gather information on people she's serving. So it's really they've been very productive discussions. We've gotten a lot of ideas, just been happy to see the people who've connected. We had a case manager from Lorette the other day who runs a makeshift pantry when he visits people, and the food bank, Chad Robinson, turned to him and said, I can get you food. So it's just great to see those types of partnerships come up. These are some of the services we have featured. We tried to focus them where they made sense. We had Springboard in Georgetown to showcase the untraditional models of housing they're doing. We had the Division of Libraries here in Dover. Obviously, the food bank was our Milford host. Ruth, I thank you for coming to Georgetown. It's really been intense right off the bat for Department of Education. And then we had Christiana Care at the Hope Center to talk about the work that they do for primary care and respite and things like that. So the other part that we wanted was for people who could not make a session, we just wanted to hear from the community. So to reach a broader audience, we have created a very short survey. We did not want to make people give their name and number, address, anything like that. It's a very short survey that allows people to share their experiences, their thoughts, their questions at their convenience. We presented this QR code at sessions and let people take it with them, laminated copies, whoever wants one, and then we've been sharing it digitally with stakeholders. We've also put it in our newsletter. It's on social media. It's on our website through tbchousing.com. There's a pink banner at the top that will take you in 2 clicks right to the survey. And we will be sharing the results of those surveys with all of you. In addition to the sessions, so we wanted to kind of see what we're learning and what the questions were, and then provide those facts and answers on social media. So we created a digital education and awareness campaign that's been largely on social media, also included on our website and our newsletters, and made available to our partners. We do a weekly stakeholder call with the governor's office and all the state agencies. Department of Corrections has been wonderful. Thank you. You shared everyone, I think, and I appreciate it. Others have too. So if I have not named you personally, just let me know. But we're really happy that, so many people are engaged in helping us spread the word. These posts have been, the social media posts you're seeing have been designed to promote social services, highlight data, define common terms, and then obviously get people talking. Here's an example of one that went out this week. I think today, if anyone hasn't seen it, was focusing on the library services, the teleservices that they highlight. And also Porterfield from the Division of Libraries did come to our first session to really talk about what's available across the state for people who walk in, who need to use a computer, who need a private space for a job interview, things like that. The other thing that you get a sneak peek of today, and this will kind of end our overview, we are working with GIC, a government agency, with a very talented videographer, Daniel Sato, and he is helping us create a Faces of Homelessness video series. And then we will be sharing that with all of you. And so you'll get to see the first one that we have today that we'll be using. It'll be on YouTube, be able to be used through your agencies. We have more coming to showcase not only people and the factors behind their homelessness, but also the services provided. We love to come video at the Field Center, Rachel with your group, of everybody, but just showcasing what's out there in very short, digestible videos. So we're gonna see that. The president. The fact that the president. And again, that's GIC who's helping us do that. It will have a collaborative logo at the end. We were excited to share it to you today, but there will be a call to action there. Happy to answer questions.
Quick one. When you have those videos available, let's talk. It's thoughtful for us to have you share them.
Oh, definitely.
If you don't mind.
They will be, everyone to share them.
Yeah.
You could even tag, like, it with, I guess, each person's permission, or members of the collaborative. I'd love to.
Yeah, we've been tagging a lot of the members in the agencies, like all of the partners on social media, Facebook, Instagram primarily. Yeah, awesome. We did originally share with, like, for the state agencies, like your respective comms team, and let them know what was happening, how to reach out. So we'll continue to do that. Thank you.
Mike?
Thank you. Yes. Dr. Mitro from the University of Delaware was kind enough to help us synthesize, I think, some of the findings from the last couple of meetings, the surveys that we've sent out, and make it more presentable.
Well, thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. I know a lot of you, but also don't know a lot of you. So for those who don't know me, my name is Steve Matro. I am a professor at the Biden School of Public Policy and Administration at the University of Delaware. I run a small research center there called the Center for Community Research and Service. And I've been doing research on homelessness for well over a quarter century, I hate to say. Long time, and for the last 7 years, doing research on homelessness in Delaware, and also I'd like to think addressing homelessness in Delaware, so just kind of getting out and hopefully making some kind of impact. And so I've been working a bit with the State Housing Authority with the collab, is I guess what it's called now. So specifically just providing some technical assistance, working with Michelle and with Alex, and it's been a great experience. They, and I'm sure a lot of the members of the collab are aware that a survey that they were asked to fill out, and then I think it's important when people fill out a survey that they also kind of get to see what's being done with the survey and not get the feeling that, you just fill something out, you submit it, and then it just goes somewhere where you never see it again. So these are preliminary findings, and what we did was take the items from the survey that pertain to direct homeless services. The survey asked a lot of questions about services, about homeless services, and that got interpreted on a wide scale, and that's appropriate. So, for example, like, I should know this. I think DHSS, basically said they provide X number of dollars for like light heat assistance, which is assistance for heating and for heating, and I think for cooling too, which is, yes, paying utility bills can prevent homelessness. It does address homelessness, but what we're looking is what were the programs that specifically addressed homelessness as homelessness. Things like providing funding or having programs for shelters, for outreach, for different things like that. What are the members? What are the entities that are represented on the collaborative? What are they doing in terms of providing funding and programs on homeless services? And through that, getting some kind of an idea of what this what the system, the homeless services system in the state looks like, and kind of getting a picture of that. So getting very preliminary results. I'm also going to say these are probably not complete. This is all from the survey and what you filled out. So if there were some services that people didn't fill out, or if people did not fill out the survey and your organization is not represented, then obviously that's missing data. So with that caveat, going to basically give you a sketch of what the system looks like, and then drill down a little bit and tell you, and just give an overview of what the shelter system looks like. And some of you, this may be stuff you already know, and for some of you, this may be totally new stuff, but it kind of gives you an orientation. Shelter system, and I'll use the word system, I'll kind of resist the efforts to put like scare quotes around that word. But, kind of look at, when we talk about shelters, what are we talking about? And also when we talk about the need for more shelters, why we're talking about it. We're going to do all that in about 10 or 12 minutes that I have left. I've got 4 more slides left, so it's going to be pretty brief, and of course, happy to answer questions. And I'm doing a slide. So this is the data set that I had to work with. This is taken from the surveys. What I did is basically broke this down by the different programs. So a couple of the entities have multiple programs, and basically broken down by program and also by funding and funding source. So you can kind of, it's a busy slide. You can kind of look at it for a couple of minutes or for a little bit, digest it a little bit, and going to basically keep it at that. I have a couple of things which couple slides which break this down, but before I go to that, any comments or questions or thoughts about this? Anything? Make this a little like a Rorschach test or something, kind of get your reactions. Great. That's
So you're not including housing or funds for permanent supportive housing?
correct.
Don't do COC funds, even though it's specifically for people experiencing homelessness.
This is a call that I made, basically considering permanent supportive housing to be literally that, permanent housing. So that's
Okay,
kind of
so this is
graduated
just
from
the
the
emergency services part.
This is the homeless
Okay.
services, right?
Okay. And then I guess the other thing was just that the city of Wilmington has some resources that aren't listed, but as you said, if they didn't, I don't know if they didn't.
I would be interested to hear what those services
Just
are.
ESG and CDBG, how they use them. That's all, just to mention. Same like how the county and DSHA gets.
That's an interesting question. I don't know how they're using it.
Yeah, it's a very little amount of money. But they fund some of the shelters in Wilmington.
Then that's an example of one of the things that has been omitted. All right. And so 2 slides based on this that I think is important to be aware of. First of all, looking at sources, I kind of put the funding sources into four very broad buckets: federal funds, state funds, county funds, and private funds. A lot of the federal funds are passed through, meaning they go through other entities, counties or localities. So ESG, I would probably count more as federal funds than I would as City of Wilmington funds, because it's not coming out of City of Wilmington's pockets directly. And so as you see, the total, let me go back 1 slide. So total about little over $12 million comes through these funds, totally goes directly to home services. And out of those 12 million, almost 3/4, about maybe 70% of that money comes from federal funding. And that's some federal funding directly, but a lot of it goes either through the state or through counties, and provides the bulk of the funding for homeless services. Second comes from the state, and the $3 million comes from the state. That's either from general funds, kind of from state revenues, or money from the different budgets of the Department of Corrections, or the health and social services, money allocated towards them that then get funded. So that's about $3 million. And then kind of small slivers, respectively. The private funding, I think, is all Federal Home Loan Bank, and even though it has the word federal in it, it is not a federal agency, and they provide some assistance, and then small amounts of money coming directly from the county coffers. And in the case of Sussex County, that's kind of a more general fund that funds homeless programs, but also funds other programs. So it's a little, again, putting data into buckets isn't always the easiest thing, but it kind of gives you the sense that most of the homeless services are funded through federal money. Of course, as you're aware, there's a lot of uncertainty going on there. There's change that's going on there in terms of how the funding is going to be allocated, the amounts of the funding, and different things like that. The second biggest, the state, is probably what we all have the most, and I'll include the counties as well, what we have the most direct, I don't say control, but direct impact on. And then with the county fund, and also, municipal services, that's also money that has a bearing on this. And again, any questions, thoughts, reactions?
Steve, I just wanted to make sure that, I think you said it, but this is results from the survey of the collaborative participants. If we were to ask a provider of homeless services to identify their sources of funding, it would be a very, very different pie chart. So, I think I just want to make sure that we weren't confusing the two things, right? I mean, this is our sort of, flow of funds out. And so I think, and maybe you could even comment on what you might think, a provider's pie chart would look like on just for some context.
Yeah, I was just thinking about that, that the private looks so small on this, just because, but that there are so many of those grassroots. And I think it's important for us to understand that.
I mean, and so some providers,
Bring them in.
and some providers may have only private and no government.
Right, and they're not gonna,
funding.
they're not reporting.
Well, that's not who we asked either, right? I just wanted to make sure that that we were clear about the scope of the survey and who was asked and what this actually represents. It's that outward flow of funds from the members of this collaborative that were specifically sort of selected because they are in that government, quote unquote, realm.
I'm glad you brought that up. And yeah, the private funding is misleading when I have this little sliver. There are organizations, Sunday Breakfast Mission comes to mind, Friendship House comes to mind, that do not receive any of these funding at all. And they raise their operating funds through, and the assistance that they get through their own network of private sources.
This is where government is spending homeless services money in Delaware.
Yes. Yes.
That's maybe rather than the receiving side.
So again, just making everybody aware of that. So when public money goes to homeless services, this is kind of how how the pie is made up. Also, probably most organizations that provide homeless services are funded at least in part through public money in some respects or another. The two that I mentioned are two very prominent exceptions to that. But so, anything else? And then the second chart is what the money, the $12 million that we put out there, what that money goes to. And the biggest slice there is the green slice, which goes to temporary housing. And by temporary housing, meaning shelter and transitional housing. And that's a little bit over 50% of that money. The next biggest category is for something called rapid rehousing. For those of you who are not familiar with rapid rehousing, that is money that is used to help families move into housing, into permanent housing, but it's assistance that is not permanent. So it's usually 1 or 2 years of rental assistance that basically, and then also often has the families working with case management and other support services to basically get some time to be into permanent housing and then hopefully get to where they can support either that housing or some kind of other housing in the community, and they won't go back into the system. I included this. Some places consider that to be permanent housing because it is time limited. I would consider that to be more in terms of homeless services. It also gets people directly from homeless services. Directly from homeless services like shelters out into housing. So I would use that. There's also Department of Education, the Federal Department of Education, what's left of it now, through McKinney-Vento Assistance, provides education assistance to schools and education. I think we've got a representative here for that. So that gets a sliver. There are case management supports that receive this money, so that's in addition to the shelter that gets received. There are supports and then again that catch-all orange thing, that orange slice is from assistance that homeless services comes from, but not more generally. And I think those are all the slices. And then the gray, and then the prevention, which is kind of prevention, temporary housing. People get placed into housing in the community. People get placed, hotel, motel vouchers, housing placement assistance, where they'll get like first month's rent or something to move out of shelters, is the last slice. And again, we've got one really big slice, two moderate pieces, and then three relatively thin pieces there. And again, any responses, addition? Yes.
I guess I just wanted, just a question. This is more about the state money. So the DHSS, temporary hotel motel money, and it was on the first slide. It looked like it was about 1.6 total. Is all of it state money or is some of it federal money too? Because I know you have to be Medicaid TANF to get it, and I've always wondered, is the source that's paying for the hotel state dollars or federal dollars? And I didn't know if anyone knew that.
TANF, right?
Well, because there's TANF and Medicaid eligibility, which, so I always assumed there was federal money in that program. And I'm just,
Yeah, you know what, we get a lot of it and
no, it's okay. I've always wondered that. And I thought
You
maybe.
don't get where it comes from.
No, but I do,
It's
because
all-
I get every day people saying I need to get into the Hope Center and I don't know if they have a qualifying benefit.
Right.
So that's why I have to send the date of birth and their name, because even, I don't know, which is
So
crazy.
there is a line in the state budget that is around
Yeah.
$1.6 million. I think that's what they reported here. I don't know if that's leveraged by additional federal funds for a program that's $3 million or whatever it might be, or not. I'm not entirely sure. But I know that what I think they reported to us is that the state money is
Yeah.
1.6.
Yeah, I knew that was the line in the state budget, but I always thought there was some type of federal participation in some way, but that could be wrong too.
I think you're right. I think when we talk to the State Service Center, I believe they say it is a federal guideline that they have to follow.
Right, that's why.
But
Okay.
But the federal government does make federal guidelines for programs that they don't fund as well.
that's
Pretty common. It'd be very interesting to see what the breakdown is in each of these categories of federal, state, private, to understand sort of what are the drivers in funding those activities.
Yeah,
They're going to go back to your first chart,
I
right?
mean, I can go back.
Well, like within-
Real quick, I'm also conscious of time here, but, the federal, I break that down, general state funds, I just imagine are just funds that get allocated by the legislature. And so we have ARPA funds, we got McKinney-Vento, which is money earmarked for homeless programs. There's federal just coming from HUD, which is a lot of the money that the Housing Alliance basically allocates, or the Housing Alliance, the Continuum of Care basically allocates. CDBG money, which is kind of more general money that gets funded to counties and cities, and that is eligible for use for homeless assistance. And so it's kind of a mixed bag. I don't know if that's helpful for.
Now, I'd actually like to see, can you go forward a slide? You have these breakdowns of federal, state, county, and private. I'd like to understand how in the next slide, the green breaks down amongst the
How much is federal? how much
Yeah,
is state?
I'd like to understand that, because I think that makes a big difference in understanding how to prioritize state resources.
Okay. I can get that to you, or I can get that, I can get that to Michelle, and then she can send it around to.
I think the survey data collected will allow us to get there.
Just understanding that, because, I mean, homeless services by funding type is very important to understand, but also to what degree are we pulling money from those categories, so that maybe it's not worth it to take some of the federal restrictions in certain categories and move that money in another place.
Then the last slide, and this is data that I got from Amelia, who's in the house, and so give her credit for this. She Amelia's kind of the data queen over at the Housing Alliance, and collects data for federal reporting, not only for the size and for the homeless population, but also for the facilities that provide shelter and housing, and including permanent housing. And what I did here was just took out the shelters. Shelter, a big chunk of the money goes for emergency shelter. And these are the different shelters that are in the state. The ones that are that are shaded white is Newcastle County, green is Kent County, and then orange is Sussex. I also included the hotel motel voucher program, which is included as emergency shelter for purposes of federal reporting. I think it's also an important source of. This is money that goes for vouchers directly to hotels and motels. This doesn't double dip for like the Hope Center, for example, which also gets money from the state for people that are staying there. So that's the 171 there is additional.
I'm pretty sure Shepherd's Place is Ken.
Did I? No,
Pretty.
Yeah, Shepherd's.
Yeah.
there's a Shepherd.
Yeah.
Okay.
You mean Shepherd's House?
You're thinking about Shepherd House.
Shepherd's House doesn't shelter. That is Kent County.
Okay, so thanks for the corrections. So a little more equal in terms of Kent and Sussex. You have, just several obvious things is overwhelming number of shelter beds are in Sussex County, are also in places north of the canal. There's, the other shelters, other counties are fewer and are also substantially smaller. This does not include domestic violence shelters. This is kind of, I put it in just emergency shelters, places where the stays are typically time limited. Stays are not tied as much to services as they are to providing immediate shelter to families and to single adults that are in crisis. And also from there, ideally moving them either back to housing or into more long-term programs. But this is kind of the first response to homelessness. And like I said, domestic violence shelters is kind of a different system that gets included under the emergency shelter umbrella. They are not included in this. And a lot of times the shelters, there's specific populations, typically either adults or families, which means adults with children. Some of them provide services for both. There's shelters that are for veterans only. There are different types of shelters as well. What's called a sanctioned camp, which are basically tents that are monitored by a nonprofit that's like the Theros Village, which is a recent addition. Tiny homes, I think most of us are familiar with the Springboard Collaborative, where it is emergency shelter, but it is not made, it's a collection of small homes where kind of housing structures where people can stay and have some privacy and also able to lock their door, which a lot of times they can't do in other shelters. So there's different types of shelters, different populations served, different sizes of shelters. I did not include any shelters that were under 10 people. A lot of times those kind of come and go and are kind of difficult to hurt. So there's a couple of smaller ones that are left off. And
You might have said this. How did you get the beds? Is that from Mark?
from the HIC, these are the beds that get reported.
Okay, those are the beds.
For the HIC, the housing. And
I mean, I guess I get to define bed.
The Hope Center is always an issue because your beds vary depending on the size in the unit. Like if someone's sleeping in a bed, it's a
Should
bed.
be like, but it's by person, it's a bed a person, because like Sunday breakfast mission, one bed, one person.
Yes,
right?
that's how we did. I think Amelia, that's how we did the HIC this past year, right? Yeah. So we did beds at the Hope Center by the number of people sleeping there that day.
And because of Amelia's work, I just took a number and put it up there from what I got from them.
For us, it would be interesting to know, are there any restrictions on who can stay, like hard restrictions on who can or cannot stay in some of these?
In most of these, there are restrictions.
Right, and that's sort of the hurdle that we see with PTO with frequently. Yes, beds are available, but a lot of the times if we make referrals, we're met with denials because of some type of exclusion.
Well, can you give an example of an exclusion? Because
Well,
if
for
they get house
DOC
money, they're not really supposed to, they're not.
Male or female?
DOC would be sex offenders.
Offenders are the best example.
Yeah, so we don't allow.
I thought maybe they had limited or they were maybe
Warrant is a thing that comes up all the time with centralized intake, even if it's old and only fine related. We get a lot of back on warrants. I don't know if that comes
So
up.
it's sex offenders is your biggest one, you said?
That's our popular,
That's our
Most
biggest exclusion, but often we get exclusions simply because they're coming
from us.
I mean, that's kind of a more general exclusion.
Right.
I think that they're coming from incarceration or,
Are they allowed to do that?
I mean, that's the whole thing.
Also location.
All conversations. Should we have it? Should we have it?
No.
Okay.
No.
And I said no. So no.
We tend, really, for the Hope Center, we tend to have some struggle with getting our folks into the Hope Center as well. So, I mean, but for what reason? Just eligibility, being able to get a referral? Well, we can talk about it. Yeah.
I'm gonna keep things moving. Thank you for,
Thank you, Steve.
I'm gonna, transfer over, I transferred the clicker over to Ray.
Question about the,
Did you,
Yes, a question.
Yeah.
was all that was presented based on the first survey we answered, or the second one that we answered more recently?
the second one, I believe, where we called out some of the things that we felt were good to know about in terms of maybe like homelessness prevention, but where that string gets really, really thin.
Okay.
So yes, the second.
And then all the services that we talked about on there, or the pie charts for the money, that was services related to all four definitions of homelessness, right? Not just the ones we talked about last meeting. We're just going to focus on the first definition, I thought.
Yeah, because McKinney-Vento doesn't fall under.
But this was not, you said you took out like permanent supportive housing.
Right.
This is more that emergent response.
It didn't include prevention money, right?
No.
And that's where we were trying to draw some lines, right? I mean, we appreciated the submission of LIHEAP, a program that helps pay for people's electric bills. And yes, if you lose your electric, you might lose your apartment, might lose housing, you might become homeless. But, as a prevention program, that gets tied really thinly back to the program source. And so I think that's where we had to kind of try to focus this in on both sides. What provides permanency? So SRAP would be a program that DSHA put out and said that's not really about homelessness. It helps people, so it fixes homelessness for that individual, but it is not necessarily geared to serving people who are experiencing homelessness. So that was the connection that we
You
were
really
trying
can
to.
just focus. Just for not doing all the extra, like.
Well, and so again, I mean, as I looked at sort of phase one, what this group needed to do to get some things, moving on, as we get into the next few months, we wanted to make sure we were pretty clear and concise, and acknowledge that we are ignoring huge parts of all of this, but in phase, the next iteration, I think the next sort of segment of work, I think that's where we expand into those areas.
I think of this as like focusing on the crisis response parts.
Yeah.
You have the prevention, you have the housing stability part, which I could argue should be there, but I won't. But focus on like the crisis response part of this.
All that was emergency.
And again, also just the funding that this is directing. Yes.
I think also important to point out that this is what accommodates homelessness. This doesn't necessarily, like shelters don't solve homelessness as much as they get people off the streets. They give people a roof over their heads temporarily, and then.
Should we explain though, maybe that last slide again? I mean, that was I don't have to go back to it, but I mean, just conceptually, that was the number of beds in the system, regardless of whether or not they received any of the funding from slides. Right.
Correct.
Yes.
I will say code purple wasn't included, but again, whether it should be or not is a question because it's temporary. It's definitely not publicly funded.
I just wanted to make the point that we haven't yet, and probably eventually should, kind of tie the first few slides into those beds. But we didn't do that in here. And I mean, the Sunday breakfast mission is the example that you used for one that operates without public support, and yet it's on the chart. So I just want
And
to
it's
make
a big
sure.
number.
It's a big number, yeah. And I just want to make sure that we were sort of, there was a break between those slides. Good. All right. Delaware Blueprint for Solving Homelessness. Oh, good. You figured it out.
We did.
We did.
All right.
And we're here to tell you all about it. No, we did not figure it out.
Yes, you know.
Or we did.
do.
What should I say?
To be a funded blueprint.
Okay, so thanks for giving me the opportunity to present this today. I am not Suzanne or Sarah. I'm just using their slides. These are the consultants that helped us at the Continuum of Care put together this blueprint for solving homelessness that I'm going to share. And I decided to use the slides they already created instead of create my own. So just briefly about process. So first of all, some of y'all may, if you were at the UD conference, Sarah from Housing Innovations was there and presented this content. And actually, yeah, 1, 2, 4. Oh, thank you. I'm passing around just like a 2-pager brief overview of the blueprint. So the Continuum of Care in 2017 created an action plan to end homelessness. There were a couple of elements of that plan that actually did come to fruition and were somewhat successful, which was cool. But then COVID happened in 2020. The system of care, as a result of that and the resources that became not available and others that became available, the homeless system was really in crisis response mode. It always is in crisis response mode, extra crisis response mode for a couple of years due to COVID. And what we decided to do in 2024 was to revisit and try to come up with another like strategic plan for what could be done to solve homelessness in Delaware. We looked back at the old plan. We brought Housing Innovations in as our consultants to help us do the work. The annual meeting in 2024, the Continuum of Care, we have an annual meeting. It was a full day affair last year. It will be again this year in October, coming up October 23rd. Mark your calendar. Be here. It's in Dover. But last year, what we did was we talked about, we revisited that plan, got feedback from the community, brought that all together. And then there was an election. We had a new governor who was interested in addressing homelessness and interested in and ultimately put together this collaborative. And so what happened at the Continuum of Care level, at the Continuum of Care board level, and there are multiple COC board members in this room who were part of those conversations, there was a decision to, instead of do like a strategic plan to address homelessness, to put together something that would be more consumable, more quick, and able to be delivered to this body to serve as hopefully, and this body can do what they want with it, but hopefully somewhat of a roadmap. As basically the Continuum of Care telling this collaborative, this is what we see and what we recommend. So that's what this is supposed to be and is intended to be. Any kind of questions about process and what this is? Okay. We got feedback from COC members. We included some feedback from people with lived experience, primarily through the process of focus groups, which we did 4 of this year, a couple last year with people experiencing homelessness at shelters and at day centers. All right, so we have visions and core values. Housing is a human right. No one can solve homelessness alone. It's going to require collaboration. People with lived experience should be involved in shaping solutions. We want to rely on data to drive action, and accountability is an important part of this, that if something's not working, we're accountable to it. We try to fix it and make it better. And that practices we should all be committed to practices that are evidence-based and work to get the outcomes that we want, which is people to not be experiencing homelessness. Part of the blueprint includes just an outline of what makes a strong homeless response system. Again, this is just really educational. This isn't about Delaware specifically, but these are really core components of what makes the response to homelessness in the community effective. Having strong homeless prevention and early resolution when people are having a housing crisis. So this is the upstream stuff about, obviously LIHEAP is a component of that, but rental assistance, keeping people stably housed, eviction prevention, all of that work as upstream as possible so that people don't keep falling into homelessness. One of the things when you look at the national data that you see currently is that more and more people are newly becoming homeless who've never been homeless and that we should have resources available to prevent that from happening, so that more and more people will keep coming into shelters and homes and streets. Another really important part of a homeless system is to have street outreach that is working with people who are out on the streets, sleeping in encampments, sleeping on benches, that is focused on getting those folks connected to services and housing as quickly as possible. The crisis response component of that is important. It's important to keep people warm, make sure people have food and water and basics. But just as important, that outreach should be focused on getting people connected to housing and services. A low barrier shelter, low barrier shelters that welcome all and promote stability. Like we were talking about, where the barriers to access to shelter in Delaware, what does that look like? A strong homeless response system has shelters that are as low barrier as possible, while still maintaining safety for the staff and the people that are staying there. A coordinated entry system that simplifies access to the resources that exist in the community. Shared data systems so that we can know what's working and track outcomes, and really good supportive services, right? So a system that is really focused on placing folks who are experiencing homelessness into housing, preventing people from becoming homeless, keeping them in their housing, but that ultimately some folks are going to need a lot of supportive services to maintain whatever housing they do have, and that supportive services are a really critical component of the work to end homelessness. These are the key gaps that the COC sees in the current system of care for people experiencing homelessness. Shelter capacity isn't adequate to meet the need, especially in Kent and Sussex counties. We see this always regularly. At our organization, through centralized intake, when folks are calling for help and there just isn't any available. But I'm sure that in many of your organizations, you see this as well. More people are in need of shelter than shelter is available. Permanent supportive housing. So that's housing that's really targeted to people experiencing homelessness who have disabilities and have been homeless for long periods of time. Our permanent supportive housing inventory, our capacity, that housing that those folks need is too limited. The need for that housing is too high compared to the resources.
Rachel,
Yes.
should permanent supportive housing inventory be combined with shelter capacity in most cases? Like, should they be co-located?
Could be. There are communities that co-locate those things. There are. What did I say?
It's not easy.
Yes. So an example, the Hope Center does have a couple of permanent supportive housing units on site. I know that there
I
is
think you're 17 now.
Oh,
We have that.
now because you have Bash now, right? So yes, there are places, including Hope Center in Delaware, but other places in the country where you have some shelter units, some permanent supportive housing units. There's site-based permanent supportive housing, there's scattered site, that's tenant-based rental assistance that operates like a voucher. There's benefits and drawbacks to both. And some work
Sometimes
better for
with
some
the
people.
shelter, there's comparison amongst the people, preference.
Yeah, it's hard to do when they're co-located, but it can work for some.
Is it better to separate them generally?
Those two, I think permanent supportive can be blended into like the other housing, permanent housing subsidies, yeah.
Yeah, we have it on one floor,
Oh,
so it's not mixed in with all the other floors, but there's no, everyone comes in through the same front door. I mean, it hasn't really been, it can be challenging.
From a design and a financing standpoint, though, too, a little bit. I mean, they're completely different.
Yeah.
So from that perspective, whether they're co-located or not, you still sort of have a firewall. Even when they are co-located, you have a firewall between the two different things within a building. Whether there's a gap between the two walls or not, doesn't really matter.
It helps
they're really
with funding too. It's like we diversify our funding by having PSH in there. You know what I mean? Because we're worried about our operating supports. It helps us with at least being able to project money because we have those units.
There's lots of conversation always about workforce shortages in the homeless services world. So that is folks working in rapid rehousing programs, case managers working at shelters, shelter operations staff, paid staff at shelters. A lot of shelters operate using volunteers as well as part-time staff. And so a lot of folks aren't who are being served in homeless assistance programs aren't getting high-level, sophisticated, consistent, ongoing case management support. Even a lot of times staff, when shelters do have case management staff, they're often spend a lot of their time doing general operations in the building, keep making sure the building's safe and everyone's safe, versus a lot of the case management activity just because of capacity. So it's funding, workforce shortages, reducing effectiveness and access to services. We also have a lot of shelters that only take certain times a day, days a week, because of their workforce shortages. Like we don't have staff here who are trying to do an intake on Tuesdays or Thursdays, as an example. Data sharing across systems remains inconsistent and challenging, and makes it hard to serve people and know what outcomes folks are getting. And then there are specialized resources for youth, survivors of domestic violence, and older adults that are lacking in this system of care. This system of care generally is not designed to serve specific groups of folks well. It's not resourced to be able to do that well for a lot of different reasons. So based on all of that, the CUC identified 6 priority areas. Addressing critical systems gaps, which that's really what I'm going to spend time talking about today. Housing supply and access, there's a real recognition by the continuum of care that you have to address critical system gaps, homeless response, but that the supply of affordable housing and access to that housing for people experiencing homelessness is an important part of the work that needs to happen. Eviction prevention, sustaining and expanding the eviction prevention work that's already happening in Delaware is important for keeping folks out of the system. Improving cross-system coordination is a big one that that's, I think, part of why we're all here, is to improve cross-system coordination. Housing-focused case management and supports. So this was a big one in the 2017 action plan that the COC put together. It's another big one here. They're just, again, this comes back to workforce shortages as well, but there's just not enough like if someone goes into Shepherd's Place and then from Shepherd's Place goes to Watcoat and then from Watcoat goes to Casa, they don't have, usually, it's exceptionally rare for that person to have any case manager following them through the system. There's no consistent system-wide case management that's happening for folks, unless they're connected to a specific type of support in one of DHSS's divisions or other places of the state. And even then, it can be really hard to keep track of them in the homeless system for folks at the state. So the case management capacity is lacking for sure, and case management that is housing focused and really focused on rehousing people. So folks who know how to work with landlords, know what housing subsidies this person could benefit from, and are really doing that type of case management work. And then, of course, the benefits and mainstream supports that people need. Folks experience, in the system of care for people experiencing homelessness, it can be hard for folks to maintain and access the benefits that they're eligible for. There's been, I think, a lot of improvement, honestly, in the last many years. A lot of homeless service providers have gotten like assist sites so they can help people sign up for benefits. But it's hard to maintain benefits when you're experiencing homelessness and don't have access to high quality case management supports. So the critical systems gaps that we really want folks to focus on first and foremost are these 4 things. First is increasing low barrier emergency shelter capacity. I think a good thing to talk about is what are those barriers that maybe don't make sense and how do we get rid of them? Or how do we help programs get rid of them in a way that is safe and works well for them and their staff and the people staying there? An example of a low barrier shelter would be a shelter where if you're a couple, you can go, if you're a male, female couple, you can stay together and go to shelter. If you have a pet, you can take that pet with you to shelter. A lot of reason people stay outside with pets is because they won't pick up their pet to go to shelter. Another example is like having your own space is a very important part of this. A lot of folks, especially folks with certain types of mental illness or trauma histories don't want to go and sleep in a room full of people that they don't know for really good reason. So there are a lot of ways to design shelter to be low barrier, and we have very little of that in Delaware. We have some of it, but we need more. Do you want to talk about that more? Anyone?
I would talk about that.
I know you love talking about it. Okay, we can come back to it. Expand street outreach and encampment response. So we have some street outreach in Delaware. We have some street outreach through DSAM that I learned a lot about recently that I didn't know as much about. There's one from there is some minimal PATH funding that comes from SANSA at the federal level that hopefully still comes. There's also other funding that DSAM uses to support some outreach. And then I know DSHA funds some outreach with the Home for Good funding. But it still totals maybe 10 maximum homeless street outreach workers specifically for the entire state of Delaware. Something like that. The entire state. You might not even know that. So we need a lot more of that in order to focus on really getting people who are sleeping outside access to services and housing, and responding to encampments in ways that are helpful for the person and not, right? We know that encampment response, addressing encampments can get really challenging for a lot of different reasons. And so really focused on getting people the services they need and getting folks off the street into safe places. Increasing the stock of permanent supportive housing. We already talked a little bit about that. We need more of it, or folks are going to keep staying on the streets. And we also, and then on the prevention side, so the other big piece is prevention. You all know we had the big fund of prevention funding during COVID that did a lot to help a lot of people. We are now back to a situation where, like, you might go here to get $200, you might go there to get $300, you might go there to get $700. And by the time you've done all that, your eviction's already been filed and it's too late or whatever. So the idea of having a new statewide emergency rental assistance program to prevent homelessness is something that is very, very desperately needed for folks who are at risk. A lot of folks who have evictions filed against them and who are at risk of homelessness because of that or behind on their rent aren't eligible for the eviction defense. The eviction defense only serves you if you're 200% poverty level and below, which is like 30% and below, about for area median income. So if you don't qualify for right to representation, basically through class or the legal aid organizations, you're more like 50–80% AMI, you're not getting that help and you're still at risk of homelessness.
Rachel, do we have existing programs in some of these cases that could just be redesigned to meet the needs of these programs you're talking about?
Potentially. I know DSHA funds prevention through Home for Good mainly. Is that right, Alice? Again, it's grants that are going out to individual nonprofit organizations. So there's still like a web of folks that need to be called to get X amount, whether it adds up to what you need, how quickly you can get it, right? It's that whole thing versus like a one place where you go to say, I owe $2,000. If someone just gave you $2,000, this could all be prevented.
One of the things that the governor has asked us to do, I'm not talking about housing, but I'm talking broadly across the government, is looking at ways to consolidate programs to make them operate better and ways that could be addressing barriers that way and efficiency. So that would be interesting to hear if there are critical system gap programs that are already out there that we could redesign.
I don't think there's another big pot of prevention money anywhere other than DSHA Home for Good money, but I could be. Oh, you know what? No, state service centers do some prevention, don't they?
They do a lot. Yeah, they have $450.
You get $450.
200 deposit for electric and $450, and that's through that hotel. But it's also if you don't use the hotel, it's once a year, and they do, if you get the right social worker, will reach out to the local places and kind of help. But most of the places want you to call yourself, and it's kind of, but yeah, state service center, 100%. I think that's where that focus needs to be is using what we have there and strengthening that, because that's where everyone starts, right? That's Well, yeah. But if it's only 4:50 and you're not, and you have to miss your work day, you have to show up at 7 a.m. and wait, those kind of parameters are roadblocks.
Not to
And
be
is it
right.
part of the 1,200? Like if you've got an emergency
So the
motel?
1,200 is the hotel.
Right.
And then with that program, you're supposed to call 5 landlords, and then the idea is within 90 days, you're supposed to be able to pay $450 down for your deposit. Well, don't know deposit, it's only $450, and then $200 towards electric. Or the prevention part of it, you aren't in a hotel, you're just in housing. It also helps with the same amount for utilities once a year and electric once a year, if you have the qualifying benefit.
If there are more programs that you think that could be altered for interoperability to make them work better, I'm sure the governor would be interested to hear that.
But what their design can and should be, and is in some pockets, because there's state service centers everywhere, is where the workers reach out to that community partner and have that automatic, I can come up with the 798 instead of the 450. That makes sense.
So those were really the big four that I wanted to talk about today. As you saw here, there are other priority areas that are important as well. These are the critical system gaps that the COC wanted you to know about, that are most important to decrease the number of people who are becoming homeless, get people out of homelessness more quickly, and make sure that when they are homeless, they can access services that they need. So that was the goal of these 4 system gaps. Should I end now? I don't really know how much time I have. Sorry. Are y'all interested in my continuing? 10 minutes. Okay. Do folks want to talk more? So I'll leave it up to the members of this group. Do you want to talk more about these or continue to hear more about the other priority areas? You could do either, whatever you think would be most useful.
There's more slides.
There are more slides. No more slides?
Out there. I mean, whatever you guys-
Carrie wants more slides. Who's with Carrie?
We'll just see what else is in there.
See what's up? Okay, let's do it. Let's do it. All right, more slides. Okay.
You can go back.
At this point,
Yeah,
yeah.
Okay, expanding affordable housing supply and access was the second priority area. So this is where we're really expanding the supply, we need to expand the supply of affordable housing that is affordable for the lowest income households, because those are the folks that are most likely to lose their housing and become homeless. Increase access to affordable rental housing for people experiencing homelessness. And so the difference, those can sound really similar. The difference there is, right, you have the supply of units for very low income households. But even if you have a supply, making sure those households can access it is very important. So that's things like DOC is just coming to mind. I'll use the example of like people being screened out for criminal history. So like the unit's there, but it ends up serving someone higher income because a lower income person has a criminal history that screens them out.
Eviction.
Or eviction history, eviction record, right? So actually making sure that some units are actually accessible for the folks who need it most. And then expanding landlord incentive programs. So that's really, how do we know we have some, we know DSHA has one. I don't remember if Newcastle County.
We
Okay.
do guarantees.
Okay, guarantees. I don't know if Sussex does. I know there have been attempts and there are some landlord
We
incentive
talked
programs.
about it with Delaware State Housing Authority, with the Kenny Vento, at one point doing because the vouchers, we had all these vouchers, but we couldn't get the landlords, and the landlords were saying because of the reason we just said, the high risk. I don't know if it ever came to happen.
There are some, again, I don't know exactly how the DSHA program works, but I know that there are some programs where you can literally, it sounds crass, but you can literally just pay landlords extra money. And they'll take folks because it really is about financial risk. I think some of that may have happened through a program that may have been temporary through COVID. But anyway, expanding those programs so there are more incentives for landlords to increase access to those units.
I would venture a guess that most landlord incentive programs are associated with the use of vouchers.
Probably.
The idea wasn't the voucher, because even with the guarantee of funds, what they were saying was they were limited and then the person would exit and the apartment was destroyed. So those were the incentives that, at least in the conversations we,
Well, yeah, and I think a lot of the
Afraid
incentive
of-
programs can't
afraid
be
of
used for
being
things like rapid rehousing, permanent supportive housing. It's really limited to the public housing authorities.
Sorry.
No. So I think more flexible also to be used in other types of rehousing.
When the emergency housing voucher program through COVID, the 70,000 vouchers nationwide had a lot more admin funding and flexibility for public housing authorities to engage in landlord programs, incentive programs, because we knew it would be hard to get 70,000 vouchers on the street quickly. I mean, it worked from that perspective. I'm not quite as familiar with where we are or other sort of models for landlord incentives that are not associated with some sort of person support in that rental.
Is there a sweet spot to what an incentive needs to be if you're going to toughen up the eviction possibility to, because I guess I read part of this, one of the ones you said, if they wanted to toughen up, being able to evict someone, I would expect that the folks that own them are going to want a much larger incentive if you're going to tie them into to be doing that.
Well, what's always fun with HUD is that they didn't really give any guidelines necessarily about what public housing authorities could or couldn't do with their landlord incentive program. So some of them were giving them cash. Is that just a signing bonus, basically, right? Others were creating some sort of loss reserve fund. Others were just hiring someone so that there was a person at the public housing authority for the landlord to call. So there were, probably a dozen different models. Some housing authorities did more than one of the strategies. In my travels at HUD before coming back to Delaware, I think that the person there to act as a resource to landlords, to sort of be a bridge between the tenant and the landlord and the housing authority, like that actually was probably the program or the strategy that predominantly got the best results.
Okay,
The
continue.
landlords like cash too.
Yeah. Or I think as you said that you do, I think Carrie's, you said Newcastle County has some type of guarantee where XYZ happens.
It's not to copy for either. I'm sorry.
Oh.
If someone is willing to take one of our clients, we will, we'll just say, we'll be like a guarantee. And we have had to use it a couple times. And if you have the trust fund, it's housing trust fund, so it's very clever. Not strange to it.
So the other thing, is eviction prevention, which is similar to homeless prevention, but not the same.
Yes.
So continuing to provide and expand the legal assistance and landlord tenant mediation program that we already have in Delaware. Ensure that tenants at risk of eviction have access to financial assistance to preserve and locate new housing. So one of the most successful, what we have been told, is that what makes the difference between a successful mediation when you're in eviction court with a tenant, is say, hey, I can give you $500 now if you hold on to this person, put them in a payment plan. Or I can give you, okay, they owe you $2,000, I can give you $1,000 now. And then they'll be able to afford the additional $20 a month for the next, to have some money in hand to be able to negotiate with the landlord so that they ultimately get paid and the person doesn't get evicted. When you show up if it's a payment related eviction, showing up without any flexible financial assistance, makes the chances that person can stay in that housing much less possible. My understanding is that the right to representation has had access to this flexible financial assistance, and that funding has or is about to run out, and we think it's important to maintain. Mayor Christensen.
I have one of my councilmen who is a landlord and has had a number of evictions for various different reasons. And some of the folks that have been evicted have called my office complaining. And there seems to be, once somebody is evicted from one person's property, there's a network of landlords in my community. They talk to one another, and it makes it impossible for that person, because they've been, for all intents and purposes, blackballed. What's the remedy for that? Because there are some people that tear up properties who have no regard for the landlord's property and impedes them from getting help elsewhere, because the word spreads that, oh, this person, you don't want in the property. What's the remedy to that? What can we, what's the solution to that particular?
Being evicted.
Yeah, I do not have an answer to that. I mean, there are certain, I think it's all very case dependent. Like, there are certain things that tenants do that they can't do, and then I mean, I don't know the answer to that one.
Well, Senator Lockman did the ceiling, so at least after how many years you can't see it, but
Is there a distinction in when you do an eviction search between non-payment of rent and some other cause for the eviction?
Pretty sure you can see why the judgment, when you see the judgment, it lists if it was a financial judgment or something else, doesn't it?
I don't know the answer. That was not.
I know, I'm looking at. Anyone know the answer?
he shows the judgment if it's money owed, he'll show it on the court connect.
I know, we need to put it.
But also, some of it, Rachel, depends if you're threatened with eviction.
So it might, if they can continue to pursue the eviction, even though you paid the debt off, then it may not show the money in the conviction or the eviction record then.
Right, it might just show whether you still have money owed or not, because you
Right.
can pay and still be evicted currently.
A lot of landlords aren't looking at whether or not, they're just see your name and they're like.
Yeah.
So it doesn't matter if there are people who haven't even gotten to court. Their
Yeah.
name is up there, they've been filed. So it's just the filing
Just
that a lot of people are looking at, not the difference of whether they actually owe money or that.
Or even if you've been to court, it's been dismissed. That's when we talk to the courts, there are a lot of people whose names are coming up in the culling of names that are not people who actually have been,
Evicted, it was just their word, it was just,
they had a filing against them.
and that was it.
Regardless of outcome, it's just there.
Those documents are a matter of public record.
Yeah.
Yeah, and people sit at the kiosk where you can get them and they create databases that they then sell.
Carrie, your program, did you find that guarantee to be successful?
Yes.
Because I didn't know you guys had done that's a brilliant.
Yeah, we had to form, it's with landlords that we've started relationships with.
Right.
We try to do a lot of talking to landlords, but trying to get them to take folks. But we've had landlords that have taken people that have eviction. Because now they might have an SRAP voucher, so, but even that, they're like, I'm not gonna take one with an SRAP voucher because they have an eviction. So, so that, the financial of it isn't as bad because we'd only be responsible for their portion of the rent.
Okay.
You know what I mean? But we've taken some that haven't had any subsidy.
Okay, so your guarantee wasn't like if they destroyed the apartment, it was just for the rent part.
So they send me an invoice, which the county pays if they are, and it's happened twice, we've probably done 10.
But it did open up landlords that might not have wanted to take the rent.
100%.
Yeah.
And we've had one landlord that's done like 2 or 3. Because that made them feel comfortable that family was, and they had not great back, you know what I mean? They had evictions.
What if the state did a program, like some sort of educational program to work with families that were facing eviction and stamp the records, like state backed?
I think that's what the
No,
guarantee.
but like if you did something like that, like naturally guaranteed the first and last month's rent or something. If they went to that education program in case they went through an eviction in the future.
I mean, we had to break guarantee rent for the whole the year of the lease.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah, I mean, we're not joking around. And it's like,
It's not like a deposit.
no,
Gotcha.
but we only had to use it twice and only for like a month or 2.
And I think you guys had a mitigation fund that was
Oh,
thrown.
we were creating it, was gonna go along with your but we know, but we we took a little bit of that
Okay.
to start this.
We've spent a little bit of
Like
money.
25,000, like we have it, it's only 25,000. We've had to use it for 2 people. And so,
Right.
you know, I feel like it works, but, you know,
And when we did the landlord mitigation fund legislation that we didn't ultimately run, the controller general, maybe sort of based on that type of data, only gave us a fiscal note of like $150,000 per year.
and we were going to put
actually.
150 in.
Yeah, because a lot of times with places that have had big incentive funds with different rules, everyone does it a little differently. But the general trend is you don't dip into it very often. You dip into it when you need to, but just folks knowing it's there if they need it is what gets you through the door.
And is the general trend to have the like qualifying conditions or whatever could be fairly broad? I feel like that's something we argued about a lot, like what would actually give you access to that fund? Is it just deposit? Is it just, yeah, you know, or
I mean, I think people were worried about the rent not being paid and the unit being destroyed. Like, those are the 2 big things. Whether it should be more flexible beyond that, I don't know.
Yeah, this money's super flexible. So we really, it's like we could guarantee rent for a year. I mean, I know it sounds crazy, but we did that.
Flexible money?
Yeah, it's through the Newcastle County Housing Trust Fund, which is the Rachel's.
and it's only focused on the paying of rent. So
That's
they
it.
can't use it to fix up damage or.
And it's just a letter that like I signed and said, we will guarantee your rent for the whole year.
Wow.
So, but if they take the person, you know, so it's that how important it is, you know.
I do need to leave early, so I don't want to run without saying anything. However, so I'm taking this whole conversation and taking it back to the case management piece. So I think I mentioned before, we've embedded some case managers into our system. Because honestly, we did it because it took so much time to do housing case management that we weren't able to do the rest of the cases that we had. So we have them embedded with us. It's kind of going well. It's mostly anecdotal. We haven't been long. We've probably been doing it for about a year. But we do find that it gives the landlord someone to call as well, right? So we don't have the funds. We don't have the ability to do first and last month's rent, but it's good. And the offer is if anybody from the group would like to come and see what we're doing, we welcome it because we're kind of doing it on the fly, right? We don't have a model that we're following. So if there's something you can see that helps us improve it, we'd be grateful for that. And if it's something you want to try and copy or expand, the thing I think that's greatest about it is they're embedded with us. And because they're embedded with us, it's less meetings for the family, right? We can have the family meet at one time and talk about everything, right? So if you have, you know, a substance use caseworker and a mental health caseworker, and you've got some legal stuff going on, you've got a housing case manager, it does become overwhelming for our families. So it's just one suggestion to go back to one of the big 4 that you mentioned. I know you mentioned mobile case management. We're not technically doing that, but if it helps the group to come see what we're doing, we're welcome to have you.
Is that your parting words?
Yep, sorry about that.
Yeah, I just very, very briefly, I just wanted to reinforce the idea of maybe having someone from the court in, or I don't know if that is what future agendas look like, if maybe there's one, because when we talked about the eviction shielding legislation, I'm not gonna do a great job representing all of the ideas that they kind of threw out as we were working through that, so I'm not really gonna talk about any, but they had several things they thought also needed to be done beyond eviction shielding that they were seeing as problematic. One of them being those public records being culled off of the kiosks and then kept in whatever format it's kept in to be sent to landlords. Like even if an eviction is taken off the system, someone could still be selling a database where that name is still in there. So like there's things that are going to undermine the of that legislation. They're like, I don't know if there's a legislative solution to that, but just things like that they see that I think maybe we should get on our radar for remedy.
Thank you.
That's why I wonder if like some sort of state-backed program for those types of people to show that they've gone through some sort of like financial education, something that can be shown to landlords, like, it's not a problem.
Right, even if they see the name.
Right.
Give them like a seal of approval.
Something, you
I
know?
like, yeah, I think you said it 3 times. I finally understand what you're saying is the person themselves would kind of be, you know, certified as going through and
Right, about something like education backing, like,
we're gonna say this is a good risk.
Yeah.
This person's, you know,
Instead of first time home buyer accounts, it could be like 10.
yeah, I think that's actually really I think that would be very good.
Like during expensive driving.
Right.
Right,
I love it.
rental points.
And that would show, by having some type of certification after their, conditions certificated, that they had gone through a class and understood their responsibilities as a tenant. It would show good faith, when they went to another entity to rent a property.
Yeah, one of the ideas I was floating around in that same concept was like a nonprofit that is working with that person would sign off and say, we're working with this person, it's a good risk. But I think what you're saying, actually, it could be across the whole state instead of, because how do you get past that? Because the first state community actually serves how many people, or.
I mean, it could also be something as simple as, you have college kids who got evicted because they partied too much and the landlord wanted them out. And they have an eviction on their record, but this can show that they're grown up and they're adults and go through a financial education program and can help you with that. I know plenty of kids are in school, but
That's what the class would do, would help.
something to like.
Your parent can co-sign.
So,
Expensive driving.
Same idea.
Yeah.
well, so we shouldn't have let Rachel go into the other slides, because this is kind of, again, all of these pieces, right, are separate collaborative groups, probably on their own, right? I mean, there have been groups that have gotten together and look at eviction prevention and look at these different things. And I think I do want us to get there, but I want to make sure that, again, we sort of make some recommendations, so some initial recommendations that I think are focused first on these critical systems. Again, acknowledging that we are ignoring a big chunk of what it matters. Was there anything else any other slides you wanted to take us down some dark path?
No.
Could I ask one question, sort of like building off of those gaps though? Back to particular examples. One of the things that we are struggling with in the governor's office is the definition of the term affordable. And I'd be interested to hear how groups are thinking about that.
Well, I think.
That was a recommendation of the task force, the supply task force. Yeah, and they had some recommendations about levels. Yeah, I think that's something that we could talk about.
Yeah, I think it's a broader thing maybe that.
I think we need, I think housing, I'm looking at Sonia, but I can't see her eyes through the glasses, which is okay. Okay, they're looking at me too. We agree generally, like, and the Delaware Affordable Housing Coalition, that 80% below is housing that is affordable to a household that is 80% or below. For rentals is considered what we would consider affordable housing. That's our shared definition.
Correct.
But it was different for homeownership.
Yes, it's usually higher for homeownership. I think that so the problem, I think, is that we often try to come up with a definition, but the answer is it depends, right? Because I think that there's also, for me, when I think about affordable housing in the context of our work at DSHA, it's housing that may be affordable at 80% or below, but what makes it different for us is that it has some sort of government subsidy or rental support or construction support. I mean, there are a bunch of ways that we do that, but is that an important component of, and the difference between sort of affordable housing, capital A, maybe affordable housing, and housing that is affordable? And I think those are maybe different things.
There's
So it
naturally
depends.
occurring affordable housing.
And I'm not, so the other day it came up in the context of the reassessment concept, right? I mean, should affordable housing be treated in a certain way during the reassessment?
Yes.
Well, is that money, is that housing that is just cheap, or is it housing that the state has or federal has subsidized? So, I mean, I think, again, it depends why you're asking. It depends why you're asking whether it's affordable housing or not, right?
I just think we're just trying to understand how every group is looking at it.
Yes.
Everybody uses the term differently.
Yes, but I think the recommendation in the task force was to this is the definition, we're gonna put it in state law, and I struggle with that, I really do.
Well, I don't know if it was put it into state law as much as just everyone's just supposed to agree.
But I mean,
Everyone just agreed.
It depends, right? Yeah. So
but no, that is a tough one, because I remember, just using the example of the Todd Morgan Foundation and working with them to exempt them some taxation. We were able to do that through legislation for school taxes. We've had other people asking to do that, especially in nights like recent events, and this is not the time.
January, and it's a good window. But when we initially did that, we would try to do language that targeted organizations doing affordable housing instead of just listing, putting one name in the code. And it was so hard to come to a satisfactory agreement, especially how to frame that so it wasn't too wide open or too prescriptive. So yeah, help would be.
Do you think putting something like that in the code though makes it so concrete that you can't adapt it in the future?
That was
Yeah, that's right. But I just worry sometimes that if you don't put something in the code, that it changes.
Well, right now where we are at is that we're listing specific organizations in the code,
Yeah.
not in like droves, but in that, but like that's also pretty weird. I feel like it is weird, in my opinion. Yeah. So would be an improvement. As long as you.
Is there, can I call on Sonia? Am I allowed to do that, Matt?
Is this a phone a friend kind of situation?
I phone a friend, Sonia.
I just wanted to say, part of the problem is we talk about affordable housing, about the houses, but we're really talking about people, right? And if you look at where the dearth of housing is, it's very clear that the lower income somebody is, the higher the dearth of housing is. So if you want to look at the highest group of people who are potentially homeless who don't have housing, you're looking at 30% and below AMI, because that's where the largest dearth is. Now, there's also a big dearth at 50% and a smaller dearth at 80. By the time you get to 100, there's no dearth. So part of it is that we're talking about housing as if it's separate from people, but we're talking about people who don't have enough income for the housing. And it's very clear by all the numbers in every House and Senate district in the state that the lower income you are, the less housing there is.
And with the inventory shortage, the 100% is taking what would have been
Right.
50%.
Which goes back to.
But that's again, a different, like I think that muddied the waters a little bit, right? Because I mean, the senator's talking about, taxation on provider of affordable housing, and maybe there's a way for us to relieve that because they are doing affordable, like the capital A affordable housing work. So it's a really complicated thing to say what is affordable housing. We'll have another task force or
So not to be annoying, but doesn't the word subsidized just solve this problem?
Right, that's what I was just
Like
saying.
there's housing that's affordable housing.
Right.
And then there's subsidized housing that is affordable because it is subsidized.
But we even have like the county's program, which there's no funding in it. It's not.
There you go.
Say that again, Randy, loud. Randy, we can't hear you.
Sorry.
Oh, okay.
I'm just
Never mind.
clarifying whether or not I want to say that.
And nobody wants to just say, when you see it, is that?
Right.
Nobody wants to make that connection. Okay, great. It is something that I think we need to, that we struggle with. And it's not just us. I think that is a common struggle. And I think that that's why generally when you have a purpose, you define what that means, right? I think but that's also why we have several different kinds of definitions and income limits and everything else that goes along with that. Okay. How are we doing?
So to allow time
Great, okay.
for public comment.
So, yes, so let me first, folks couldn't hear the video. Do you know that? Okay, is there, oh, you did, great. So I like to talk about the homework assignments before we talk about the schedule. So the homework assignment is for us to take that plane that is now aligned, and I want to thank the presenters and thank you for your presentations today, because I think that there is a certain amount of clarity as we put all of those different pieces together about what we've been hearing in the public, resource-based listening sessions, what the survey results showed. I think that there's some all of that sort of is supporting to a certain extent the work of the COC and the blueprint that I was going to go through and sort of give folks an idea of where I think we can be going, but I think the blueprint actually does a better job of it. So what we're going to try to do is come up with with those recommendations at the next meeting and in the spirit of how we're trying to sort of manage this collaborative process where we get together, but most of the work is done in between. That's where the homework assignment comes in. So we're going to be asking you to base the relatively narrow assignment here of looking at that emergency portion of that is the bite that we're trying to take. Think about what was presented with the blueprints, think about the other data points, and then talk through and make some recommendations back to us about how we should proceed. And then we will take that, and we're going to do this pretty quickly, maybe a week or so in each sort of step. So the first is sort of an open, send us your ideas and your thoughts. The second will be us putting back out, here's what we're hearing and here's what we're thinking is a good place for us to start and to sort of land this plane. And so we will send all of those sort of questions out to you via email, as we usually do between meetings. And hopefully we will schedule a meeting towards the end of September that is landing the plane. Am I supposed to ask whether people like the 29th of September or the 2nd of October?
So we currently have Troop 2 reserved for the 29th or October 2nd. But if everyone likes this location, we could also try to get here. But we're looking at 1 to 3 on one of these dates.
Oh, she had lived that part? Okay.
Yeah, we could have chocolate.
Oh, we'll have to bring chocolate.
I'm joking with them because they always had chocolate before, no an articles when Hershey was increasing
The tariffs?
the tariffs, like a 26% increase. I noticed we didn't get any chocolate.
No, it's a domestic. Yeah, it's inferior products.
More than welcome to use this facility anytime if it's available. I would just have to check.
Thank you. So, yes,
I don't know what impact this has, but October 2nd is Yom Kippur.
well, we were asking for preferences if there are any. Sounds like the 29th.
Sounds good.
Okay. Okay. So before I forget, thank you to the staff at DSHA for keeping us on track and keeping us moving here. Really appreciate the work. Steve, what you did with the University of Delaware. We do want to open for public comment, both in person and online. So let's do that now.
Do we decide which is going
Oh.
might prefer?
What's up, Brandy, decide?
Hey, I can make available Sussex County locations as well. If that's I'll try to Wilmington inside.
Is over okay or?
Numbers great.
So let's,
Good memory.
if it's available, we'll look at the 29th here. And if it's not, we'll do the 29th at Troop 2 where we already have the people have already been and we have the hold. Okay. Public comment. Anyone in, let's start within the room. Really? However you would like to do it, maybe come a little, you want to come up because so people, I don't know where the mics are, but
You have to stand in the middle.
Oh, they're up here.
Yeah, you're fine.
Why not give public comment? Right? Hi, my name is Cheyenne Miller, with the Home Campaign. I think I came to the summit like 2 weeks ago at UD and I was told to bring this suggestion here. And so I came because that's what I was supposed to do, about HB 135 that was introduced actually by Representative Phillip, around the, issue of homelessness, street homelessness, which I know that you guys are really, really focused on. Specifically, this bill would address the criminalization that happens that I think puts a big barrier on any outreach teams you all may have going out. One of the biggest issues we see with outreach teams is that they have to take months and months and months to build relationships with people who are experiencing street homelessness because those people are literally living on the streets and often encounter city officials, police, et cetera, in a negative way.
And those encounters tend to leave them with a lot of mistrust and a lot of concerns that they're going to be criminalized, that they're going to be arrested, that they're going to be fined, that their items, their personal belongings will be moved or stolen or thrown out. I know that this is an issue that you guys worked on and probably care about a lot, and that it's something that you all want to probably address if you are going to have more teams of people going out to give these resources out to people. I'm sure that building the trust amongst the people who are living in the street are probably going to be one of the most important things. And so HB 135 would direct localities to be able to build more trust with the community of people who are experiencing homelessness by offering them services ahead of time before they just say, you gotta go, you gotta move, you gotta get out of here. And essentially that offering of services would be, is there actually shelter beds available for this person to go to? And I think that really matters because as you all know, homeless sweeps are kind of damaging to people. And so if there is an actual place for people to go, that's great. Like giving someone a bed to go sleep in is amazing. But what you'll probably find is that most of the counties do not have that many beds available for people. And so it's important to know that if we are going to do a sweep, we should probably check and see if there's a place for them to go. Otherwise, we should leave them alone. And so HB 135 kind of offers that as an incentive and as a way to kind of make sure we're checking with the local resources available to make sure people can actually access it. And I'm hoping that this collaborative takes the time to look at that legislation and think it over. It would be really, really important that this legislation passes, I think, for the work that you all have to do long term when it comes to dealing with anyone who is street homeless. If you can't build that trust, if you guys can't get it to the point where people actually want to engage with your agencies, with the nonprofits that you partner with, it's going to be almost impossible to be able to deliver the services that I know you guys are all coming up with. So just wanted to share that as a thought. I hope you all can think through it and take it on as a consideration of a bill that you can support, promote, all that stuff. And sorry, Tizzy, you are the Senate sponsor. didn't leave you out. So that's it. Thanks.
Thank you.
Housing Alliance Delaware is in support of the legislation, and working with you to help support that.
Yes.
Something
So
very
we were
small.
discussing whether it had to be like a peanut-based chocolate but apparently this room is available, as long as we all bring a piece of chocolate to the next meeting.
Well, we
So-
have a nut allergy, so don't bring peanut based.
Okay, so no nut, just straight chocolate.
I don't know if I had to come here for the mics, but it's very short. Rachel already briefly mentioned it, but I was specifically asked by Continuum of Care staff to bring up again the COC annual meeting. I have a flyer here. There is a QR code to register. The event is an all-day event from 9:30 to 4 in Dover, here at the Modern Maturity Center. There will be people speaking on from the national level. I think they said they're talking about getting someone from another regional COC to talk. The focus is on unsheltered homelessness for a lot of the speakers. It is a free event. Literally anyone's allowed to attend. So I'm just going to leave this here. And for people who are listening virtually, it's also on the Housing Alliance Delaware website. Hopefully you all can register and attend. What is the date? October 23rd. It's a Thursday. I'll leave this.
I'm a little traumatized, but I think that was one of the last things I did in Delaware. Todd and I presented classy with the great big housing check. And there was an election and a couple weeks later. They got it.
They ended up,
But yeah.
I always think about that.
Did they actually give it back?
The checks were really not coming down. You can just
I forgot about
go to
that.
this thing and yeah, some a little,
That is so funny because
of course, I've got a pretty long list of places where that happened. Okay, anything else? Oh, online.
Oh.
Nothing online?
Can I just say once really quickly? I will send this to the collaborative, but the magazine Shelter Force is doing a pop-up mixer and conversation about homelessness at the Hope Center on September 18th. They're a national publication. They're flying in their board and staff. because they've covered the Hope Center a couple times. They want to take a tour, but they also want to bring the community in to talk. So I'll send that to everybody. Maybe we could just send it out in case anybody missed that. Thank you.
What was the date on that, Carrie?
September 18th. I'll send it to you.
Yeah, we get a ticket.
Did you send it to me too?
Yes.
We can send them through the virtual chat too, if you send us.
The gallery?
Anything else? Okay. Well, thank you, everyone.
So, what do you think?
I'm working.
But I do the whole email the COC bill. About county attorney representing Martin, saying I have to write that. It's just now. Very it's not like the county that I have seen us have to write it. So they want it protected that. Yeah, that's. Is there an attorney within the county department that can review applications? Because I feel like I should have. And he was just getting off the phone to get that.
It's gonna be a long. Cindy loves power. That's like when we worked for corporate, I got this. I got an award from the Office of Inspector General.
We're in a very quiet. I went up there, but I got like. I got it. I have some. Terrifying. I'm like, I need to get back there. So how I feel right now. Like I will. I know. We're not gonna. I think this is.
I think that's part of the problem though, is we
So anyway, her back had that. I saw it. And then I want to go, but I don't. I know. I mean, I want to think, but I don't want to.
I know, that's my point too. Although, really good search.
I think we need to make it proof, because I think that provides better solutions.
Are you leaving now?
Are gonna put us in a situation that.
Oh, you have to say it.
You know what I mean?
Right.
So-
No, I have they said they were, but I asked
I think they're represented by DHS.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying, but I think that having that conversation or having that person here. Yeah, I think so. Say that like the higher. Combination.
Very much.
But yeah.
I think that's. I always have to require copies of the identified people that are on the list.
That's one of the ways that we're.
Yeah, we signed that.
Yeah.
What I was thinking was like, if these people that don't see the eviction system, that.
Yeah, we don't have it from.
I know, man.
No, I'm not.
I personally, when I was I didn't pick up on that. But I was-
Yeah.
And that's why I do.
So-
Oh, I know. So we need to kill our first teams. Request for proposal go out for it, right? And no, state that like, we're all having to guess because I think that there's like, yes, that.
No, that is, that's everyone.
Stay back, right?
Yeah.
I'm talking.
Yeah. They used to some certification, but they went through this program, and now we're saying they're good.
They go through this program, tell people, we have to have that they're sending money
Right.
to back and forth to money.
I didn't realize there was actually that.
No, that's what I was thinking.
Yeah.
No, I'm not
But
talking.
you know what I want to have the general bill, which you know, center lot. She might. But her. She's the automatic. If it's a fine, it's. You shouldn't have to do it to people to come up.
That's why I'm having an issue. About.
This was something you needed.
I can
Some
understand,
type of software.
I can understand some sort of like initial cost in year one, cost in year two, for continued software. I'm not following.
Yeah, so I don't know the details, I just know like having someone have to like. Well, and like the one where we say. It's not, it's a. I'll see you tomorrow, Corey. Yes. We can do it.
I mean, the guy.
Oh, do you want a full copy, does anyone want a full copy of the blueprint?
I downloaded it. You email me the link to register for the TOC.
Yeah, so do you want to just take this? I can email you.
Yeah, I was thinking I should register.
So.
Want to go to Woodburn and have a meeting with the governor on data mapping? Here, go over there.
That was a good.
This is about
All sort of like.
So that's my good idea, very good idea. Maybe keep that like that, you know, but they're
It literally summarizes everything.
It's fine with me if you.
I don't know if that matters.
Turn your phone on.
Whatever.
Be like, Hey. Monday. You said Monday, I said. I don't have a qualifying benefit. Like, they have no income for $87 a month they can get in. That's the one mostly for singles, like somebody, you know what I mean? That's why I usually say for like a person.
I get
Get the referrals from the state. Get a little bit of money.
Like, I knew, like,
We have to operate with them, so that's why. It's some kind of.
This is my one, two, three. I think that usually.
But it is an all system, which,
It's got little.
you know, somebody that kind of, but with single, so sometimes they do, maybe we need to talk to those services about it, and they have a 5%.
I don't know.
Then that would qualify. We have that happen, where they go in and they qualify, well, they don't qualify, then they go in and. And then they qualify. And we can go, and we can also direct the rules from you guys. We sometimes get like from PCA and project districts. They have, the state pays for that, right? Which is. So I'm just saying, we need a housing ombudsman. And you would just call and say, I've got a, you know.
Already on this list.
So, yeah, that's, I know that's my way. You could call and say, I got, we would, there's nothing else to look at. It's like, my boundary conference. Oh, it's huge. You know, it's, you know, from the office. Yeah, I mean, she's there, but we have way more than that. We probably were like 75%. How long?
I understand.
Okay. But it depends on how much we want to. But they only give us enough money for 24 days. So they can work on their, I'm sorry, did it say?
No, I gotta go to.
Okay. I'm gonna reach out to you. Yeah, send you our updated MOU. It's just an MOU that's on here. Okay. And then we build you. I mean, I think it's, you know, it's like super, even if it's not a really big, right, we can have you, that can happen ASAP. Like, if you see you, John.
I'd like you. I'm gonna look for you and I put Carrie on that email.
I agree yesterday with.
I don't think Susan said it never.
Yes. Yes.
Sort of us.
Good. So what is the goal again? Did you get anything? Exploratory.
She's got a lot of time on her hands right now. She should be calling to get this information.
Well,
And I also,
HFA division. Public health.
like, great.
Yeah.
She's.
It's not that.
I'd be like, what are they?
That is. We'll call it. Or else I've already, you're good. I've already written the whole cost. Okay, fine. We should do that. Sure.
Can I ask you guys a question? I have a couple hours. Please don't log on.
And we'll have to work.
I hear.
But
Yes.
I gotta do it. That's whatever. But if they say, okay,
Going on.
Yes.
Great stuff. It's hard for DSAJ.
That, has the direct
I think we can totally start. I think we have put ourselves in a position where we like.
that's my final life on the university.
And we can totally.
They're gonna have a council on the third. So the county sector will finally agree to treasury. They start with we've been doing this program. I think close to. Yeah, that's the one. Except when they use it from us.
So, I mean, like, all of these things are guidance. Whether I'd like to see it.
Yeah, so that's happening.
To me, there are three, there are three buckets here, things that need to be done. Here are the things that,
So.
and,
I mean, you know, I know you're. But that's what it's really.
Yeah.
And
I mean,
that's
it
good.
was kind of achieve a vision. I mean, based on the.
The COC board can give that assurance. That, yeah, we can send it.
it's gonna be really hard because they'll.
My position is,
We got-
me, is kind of. It's like, you know, if the capital.
So the big part is So, you know, the problem is but we'll probably work that. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, the county will never say yes to something that's really unique, you know, and then. Yeah.
Others.
Like, and I was a little disappointed about that. I immediately cleared my head last night. I was like, and so I'm walking around the block. Because I did, there's a reason, and he really just got across the boat around. And I'm like, it's still clear. It's just.
The next one is.
But it's such a shit.
And
Oh my God, we just did it.
And then.
Maybe you did this. Yes, you did. We're sorry, I did. I'm so sorry. You did talk.
Where's Ashley?
So the first actually runs away. You know what? It's not what we had.
I was really happy, thankfully. So I saw the title of it, and I was like, oh, this is gonna be exciting, because there was much, so much to do. I didn't get done because of the Delaware events, and people didn't see one thing, you know. It was complicated. They just showed dedication. And then I heard. So I was listening to that, and then I was just. It's called. It's just okay. So.
Nobody knows where you Bye, guys. She had a clear feeler tonight.
I felt like their entire session was just so you guys know.
Because that's.
All right.
That's like the whole presentation was so. Again, I'm just curious.
You know what? I think that's not gonna take.
Anyway, I don't know.
And again, very.
So we just kind of, what I would recommend doing. Yeah, so what I would recommend doing, maybe we come in, a little bit earlier that we can troubleshoot.
Yeah, I was like, this is the craziest thing I've seen. I'm getting
Can I get so what?
Presentation.
So it's, but again.
I need to get
Commercial.
that would be.
Commercial. Yes.
No. So what happened last year, Ryman did his thing, I didn't
Well, and that's- Yeah, but also you don't do anything.
That way, I can have.
Okay. Yeah, that's. That's an immediate problem.
Like, we want these students trying, we're trying to turn ours over. This is public. We're doing that, you know, we're just trying to hard and
So this one's not gonna add.
I know. You know, and he's the thing is, you know, it's like do things after.
Sure, everyone wondering for.
So hopefully, you might start going to the song. Yeah. There's some harassment that you can
We got it. We got it. Wait to get it. Like, I'm gonna ask this lady, it's that. It wasn't worries.
All right, well, good luck with that.
Yes. It's what it is. We can give it a fair shot. I've applied to you wherever you are in the room, you feel.
Let's just see.
There's something about the space.
So like, it is sort of like a. That's mine.
Yeah, that's-
How is it? It's the unsafe, absolutely.
And to be honest with you, like, the first time I was like, I'm not worried about it. So we. I don't have to try to touch it, guys. Tell me we're getting it. I bet you. Wait.
We use any.
Yeah, great.
Yeah, I feel like I've been in that phase.
It was cool. It's an old theater, but that's like, if you want that.
So people are saying you earlier next time, and now we go. Yeah. Okay, the next time.
All right.
You tomorrow.
There you go.
Yeah, absolutely. I have everything to you. Okay.
Morning.
Yeah.
Okay, you too. Oh, okay, good.
We have to sign the form. Thank you so much. Email Pud, the NOFA. You said you both have to sign all those 44, so. Which is fine. So then I decided. I need to.
So I have it on his